What's going on today, YouTube? Rob here. I hope everybody had a great new year and is ready to get back at it with some brand new Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Today, what I have for you is another pre-made deck from the Yugi Legendary Decks 2 box. This time, I decided to cover Yugi's deck. This deck, to me, honestly is kind of weird because they decided to take pretty much every single strategy Yugi has ever come up with in the anime and try and cram it all into one deck. So personally, I think even in a casual setting, this deck probably isn't that good. But you know what? It's still pretty fun nonetheless, considering that it includes some really iconic cards. But before we get started with this deck profile, I just want to say if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing for more fun Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Also consider leaving a like and commenting on what else you might want to see in the new year, considering that I still want to try and get as much new content out to you guys, and I also want to see if I can reach 100 subscribers by the end of the year. But without wasting any more of your time, let's get into it. Alright guys, let's get started with this Yugi Legendary Decks 2 Yugi deck profile. Starting things off, we have Sangan. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add one monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand, but you cannot activate cards or effects of cards with that name for the rest of the turn. You can only use this effect of Sangan once per turn. Next up, we have one copy of Marshmallow. After damage calculation, if this card was attacked and was face down at the start of the damage step, the attacking player takes 1000 damage, and this card cannot be destroyed by battle. Next up, we have Blockman. So you contribute this card and special summon in defense position a number of block tokens. Rock type, Earth, level 4, attack 1000, defense 1500, equal to the number of your turns this card has been face up on your field, and the tokens cannot declare an attack. Next up, we have Blast Magician. This card lets you, each time a spell card is activated, place one spell counter on it, or when that card resolves rather, and you can remove any number of spell counters from this card, then target one face-up monster on the field with attack less than or equal to the number of counters you removed times 700 and destroy that target. Next up, we have Magician's Valkyria. Nothing special about her, she's just a level 4 vanilla with 1600 attack and 1800 defense. Then we have Big Shield Gardna. During either player's turn, when this face-down card and no other cards is targeted by a spell card, change this card to face-up defense position, and if you do, negate the spell card's activation. And if this card is attacked, change it to attack position at the end of the damage step. Next up, we have one copy of the Tricky. You can special summon this card from your hand by discarding one card. Then we have two copies of Silent Magicians. We have one level 4 and one level 8. Level 4's effect reads as follows. Each time your opponent declares or draws a card or cards, place one spell counter on this card, maximum 5. This gains 500 attack for each spell counter on it. And during the standby phase of your next turn, after the 5th spell counter is placed on this card, you can send this face-up card with 5 spell counters on it to your graveyard, and special summon one Silent Swordsman level 8 from your hand or deck. And level 8 cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned by Silent Swordsman level 4, or Silent Magician level 4 rather. And it cannot be special summoned other ways, and this card is unaffected by spell effects. Your opponent's spell effects rather. Then we have another staple of Yugi's deck, Buster Blader. This card gains 500 attack for each dragon monster your opponent controls or is in their graveyard. And then we have one copy of Dark Magician Girl. This card gains 300 attack for every Dark Magician or Magician of Black Chaos in either player's graveyard. And then we have one copy of the man himself, Dark Magician, Yugi's ace monster. Again, nothing special about him, just a level 7 vanilla with 2500 attack and 2100 defense. And then we get to the really weird part of the deck, in my kind of opinion. We have this random Exodia package that comes with all 5 pieces of Exodia the Forbidden One, the legendary Exodia Incarnate, and Exodia Necros. The 4 limbs of Exodia are just vanillas, nothing special about them. And when you have all 5 pieces of Exodia in your hand, you automatically win the duel. So that covers Exodia the Forbidden One. But Exodia Necros is actually pretty interesting because this cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned with contract with Exodia, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card cannot be destroyed by battle or spell or trap effect, and once per turn during your standby phase, this card gains 500 attack. Destroy this card unless all 5 other of these cards are in your graveyard, all 5 pieces of Exodia. Pretty much. So, kind of interesting. Weird that it would be in this deck. And then we have the legendary Exodia Incarnate, which cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from your hand by attributing 1 Forbidden One monster, and it cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card gains 1000 attack for each Forbidden One monster in your graveyard, and is unaffected by other cards' effects. Once per turn, during your end phase, add 1 Forbidden One monster from your graveyard to your hand, and when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can reveal any number of Forbidden One monsters in your hand, and if you do, draw 1 card for each. It's definitely an interesting take on Exodia. It's kind of weird that they would cram pretty much every style of play for Yugi into one deck. Rounding off our monsters, we have the 3 Egyptian God cards, which again, Yugi's the king of games. These are his staples, basically. You guys know what they do. Each requires 3 tributes to be normal summoned or set, and for Slifer, when this normal summoned card... when normal summoned, cards and effects cannot be activated. Once per turn, during the end phase, if this card was special summoned, send it to the graveyard. This card gains 1000 attack and defense for each card in your hand, and if a monster or monsters is normal or special summoned to your opponent's side of the field, face-up in a face-up attack position, I can't speak. That monster or monsters lose 2000 attack, and if their attack becomes 0, it gets destroyed. Obelisk is unable to be targeted by spell, traps, or card effects in general. Once per turn, during the end phase, again, if this card was special summoned, return it to the graveyard. You contribute 2 monsters and destroy all of your opponent's monsters, and this card cannot declare an attack the turn that effect is activated. And then we have the Winged Dragon of Ra, whose normal summon cannot be negated, and when normal summoned, other cards and effects cannot be activated. Also, when this card is normal summoned, you can pay you can pay life points so that you only have 100 left, rather than 1 in the anime. And this card gains attack and defense equal to the amount of life points paid, and you can pay 1000 life points, then target 1 monster on the field and destroy that target. So that rounds off our monsters and about half of this deck. Now let's move on to our spells. We have 1 copy of Gold Sarcophagus, which lets you banish 1 card from your deck face up, and during your second standby phase after this card's activation, add it to your hand. Again, not the greatest. If it banished face down so that your opponent didn't know what it was, it'd be a lot better. Then we have Swords of Revealing Light to flip all monsters your opponent controls face up, and it basically negates them from attacking for 3 whole turns unless this card is destroyed. Then we have Magical Dimension. If you control a spellcaster type monster, target 1 monster you control and tribute that target. Then special summon 1 spellcaster type monster from your hand. Then you can destroy 1 monster on the field. Next we have Magician's Unite. If you control 2 or more attack position spellcaster type monsters, target one of them, and its attack becomes 3000 until the end of this turn. Also, for the rest of the turn, after this card resolves, other spellcaster type monsters you control cannot attack. And we have Tricky Spell 4, which lets you send one face-up Tricky you control to the graveyard and special summon Tricky tokens, spellcaster Wind level 5, attack and defense 2000 and 1200, in defense position equal to the number of monsters that your opponent controls, and Tricky tokens cannot declare an attack. Then we have Thousand Knives. If you control Dark Magician, target one monster your opponent controls and destroy that target. Then we have Dark Magic Attack, which lets you, if you control Dark Magician, destroy all spell and trap cards your opponent controls. Then we have our contract with Exodia. So if you have all 5 Exodia, the Forbidden One, right arm, right or left arm, right leg, and left leg, you can special summon one Exodia Necroz from your hand. So that's just for your Exodia engine, which again, don't understand why you'd be playing it in this deck. I know it has to deal with Exodia, but Yugi technically never used it. It was Kaiba's adoptive father, Gozabora, who used it in a filler arc. Then we have one Messenger of Peace. Monsters with 1500 or more attack cannot declare an attack, and once per turn during your standby phase, pay 100 life points or destroy this card. Then we have Dark Factory of Mass Production. Target 2 normal monsters in your graveyard and add those targets to your hand. Then we have Monster of Reincarnation. Discard one card, then target one monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Then we have Secret Village of the Spellcasters. If you control a spellcaster type monster and your opponent does not, your opponent cannot activate spell cards. And if you control no spellcasters, you cannot activate spell cards. And then we have one copy of Ties of the Brethren, which lets you pay 2,000 life points, then target one level 4 or lower monster you control. And for the rest of this turn, after this resolves, you cannot special summon monsters. Also special summon 2 monsters from your deck with the same type, attribute, and level as that monster, but with different names from each other and that monster. And you cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this card. I have to double check because if this card is actually supposed to be in this deck, because it really doesn't look like it, but I am not 100% on this, so I'm going to have to check that out. And then we have Pot of Duality to round off our spells. This lets you excavate the top 3 cards of your deck and add one of them to your hand. Also after that, shuffle the rest back into your deck. You can only activate one Pot of Duality per turn, and you cannot special summon during the turn you activate this card. So that rounds off our spells. Let's move on to our traps. We have one copy of Gravity Bind, which makes level 4 or higher monsters unable to attack. And we have Backup Soldier. While there are 5 or more monsters in your graveyard, target up to 3 non-effect monsters with 1500 or less attack in your graveyard and add them to your hand. Then we have another Exodia piece, or engine piece I should say, in Obliterate. You can target one monster on the field and send one Forbidden One monster or Exodia card from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, return that target to the hand. If this card is sent from the spell and trap card zone to the graveyard, you can target one Forbidden One monster or Exodia card in your graveyard and add it to your hand. You can only use one Obliterate effect per turn and only once that turn. Then we have Magician's Circle. When a spellcaster type monster declares an attack, each player special summons one spellcaster type monster with 2,000 or less attack from their deck in attack position. So that's really good for being able to target your Dark Magician Girl. Next up, we have Magic Cylinder. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, target the attacking monster, negate the attack, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack. Next up, we have Magical Hats. So during your opponent's battle phase, choose 2 spell or trap cards from your deck and 1 monster you control. Special summon them as normal monsters, attack and defense 0, and face down defense position. Set the chosen monster, and if it's face up, then shuffle them on the field. The 2 cards chosen from your deck are destroyed at the end of the battle phase and cannot remain on the field except during this battle phase. And lastly, to finish off this deck, we have Mirror Force, which when an opponent's monster declares an attack, destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls. Alright guys, that's it for this deck profile. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, be sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and be sure to leave a comment on what you might want to see next. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this deck isn't really my favorite. It is kind of neat to see all of Yugi's strategies in one deck, but I don't think it really gels together very nicely, even in a casual setting. But hey, that's another deck profile down, and if you guys enjoyed, like I said, leave a like, leave a comment. Also subscribe if you're not already for more fun Yu-Gi-Oh videos, and let's try and reach 100 subscribers by the end of the year. And as always, I will see you in the next one. That's game.